Good evening. It's Thursday, the 31st of July, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Trade alert. Trump to impose 25% tariffs on Indian goods adds penalty over Russian trade. War in Ukraine. Heavy missile strikes devastate Ukraine, killing civilians and damaging key infrastructure. Health program. Free cancer screenings prove life-saving by detecting disease early and saving lives.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Prithika Sivakumar.
Good evening once again. The United States has announced a 25% tariff on Indian imports starting tomorrow, citing trade imbalances and India's continued ties with Russia. The move marks a sharp escalation in economic tensions between the two strategic partners.
President Donald Trump on Wednesday said the U.S. will impose a 25% tariff on goods imported from India starting August 1st. He also said India will face an unspecified penalty for buying Russian weapons and oil. The decision singles out India more severely than other major trading partners and could potentially strain relations. Trump voiced frustration with India's trade policies in a Truth Social post, saying its tariffs are far too high. Kevin Hassett is Trump's White House economic advisor.
India's had a market that's been pretty much closed to American products, and we've been wide open to theirs. And I think President Trump is frustrated with the progress we've made with India, but feels that a 25% tariff will address and remedy the situation in a way that's good for the American people.
Ajay Sahai, the Director General and CEO of the Federation of Indian Export Organizations, said India remains engaged with the U.S. to reach a bilateral trade agreement.
25% tariff on India is a little disappointing on us. We are constructively engaged with the US on the BTA. We are also not certain what will be the added penalty which he is talking about. But at least now we know that whatever we have to do is with reference to 25%. I think buyer and seller will start negotiating and to see what extent that can be absorbed.
Trade negotiators from the two countries have held multiple rounds of discussions to resolve contentious issues, particularly over market access for American agricultural and dairy products. Meanwhile, Russia continues to be the top oil supplier to India. In the first 6 months of 2025, Russian oil made up 35% of overall supplies. In his online post, Trump said India has, quote, always bought a vast majority of their military equipment from Russia and are Russia's largest buyer of energy, along with China. That comes a day after U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said he warned Chinese officials that continued purchases of sanctioned Russian oil would lead to big tariffs due to legislation in Congress.
India successfully launched a $1.5 billion radar imaging satellite in partnership with NASA, marking a historic milestone in bilateral space collaboration. The NASA satellite aims to boost global climate tracking, disaster monitoring, and Earth surface mapping with unmatched precision.
The NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar satellite, launched from the Satish Dhawan Space Center, is the first radar imaging satellite to be jointly developed by the Indian Space Research Organization and NASA. With a massive 240-kilometer radar and cutting-edge dual-frequency technology, L-band from NASA and S-band from ISRO, NISAR can detect Earth's surface changes down to a single centimeter. This makes it a powerful tool for monitoring critical climate indicators such as melting glaciers, rising sea levels, land subsidence, and deforestation. The satellite was successfully placed in a near-polar sun-synchronous orbit approximately 747 kilometers above Earth, where it will scan the globe every 12 days. Beyond scientific advancement, NISAR is a key component of India's rising space ambitions and its growing reputation as a reliable, cost-effective spacefaring nation. It builds on the country's recent milestones, including the Chandrayaan-3 lunar landing and its upcoming Gangayaan crewed mission. The launch also underscores the increasing importance of international collaboration in space exploration as India looks to share data globally while expanding its role in both scientific and commercial domains. The NISAR mission's data will be freely available, with scientists and emergency agencies worldwide set to benefit from its capabilities in disaster response and environmental research. The implications of NISA stretch far beyond Indian borders. Its data could prove vital in tracking the retreat of Himalayan glaciers, forecasting landslides in South America, mapping coastal erosion, or even managing agricultural yields under changing climate conditions. With Earth's ecosystems under growing stress from global warming, the satellite provides an urgently needed window into how our planet is changing in real time. As nations grapple with climate resilience and disaster preparedness, NISA's high-resolution insights could inform crucial policy and humanitarian decisions, turning this joint US-India venture into a shared global asset.
India's aviation watchdog has flagged 51 safety violations at Air India, raising fresh concerns following last month's deadly crash. While the audit is routine, the findings highlight critical lapses in pilot training, aircraft maintenance, and operational oversight across several major carriers.
India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation uncovered 51 safety-related issues of Air India during its latest annual audit, part of a broader review spanning 8 commercial airlines. The audit identified 7 Level 1 violations at Air India, the most serious category as defined by the UN's International Civil Aviation Organization, which denotes instances that seriously endanger safety. Although not directly linked to the recent Air India Boeing 787 crash that killed 260 people, the audit's release has intensified scrutiny of the airline's safety culture and operational standards. The DGCA emphasized that large airlines with extensive operations tend to receive more audit observations, but the nature of some findings, such as use of unapproved simulators and inadequate pilot monitoring, has raised red flags. Air India is not alone in facing regulatory concerns. The DGCA flagged 263 safety issues across several Indian airlines, including Alliance Air, Godwat Star, and Indigo, with many infractions categorized under pilot training, maintenance irregularities, and documentation lapses. Air India's shortcomings included recurrent training gaps among Boeing 787 and 777 pilots and failures in scheduling mandatory oversight duties. The findings have placed pressure on the airline to overhaul safety protocols. In response, Air India stated it was fully transparent during the audit process and is committed to addressing every issue identified. The regulator has granted all affected airlines up to 3 months to implement corrective actions, which can be extended with proper justification and an approved action plan. The revelations come at a time when India's aviation sector is experiencing rapid growth alongside intensifying public scrutiny over safety. Between 2020 and early 2025, Indian Airlines reported more than 2,400 technical faults, over half from Indigo, followed by SpiceJet and Air India. Earlier this year, the DGCA reprimanded Air India Express for delaying engine part replacements and falsifying maintenance records. DGCA Chief Faiz Ahmad Kidwai said that many recent disclosures that are the results of growing culture of self-reporting, which he views as a step toward greater transparency and long-term safety improvements. Despite past tragedies, Kidwai emphasized that India's skies remain statistically safe, with the country's accident rate generally staying below the global average in most years since 2010.
South Korea and the United States have finalized a sweeping trade deal, lowering tariffs and unlocking $350 billion in South Korean investment. The agreement, confirmed by President Trump and top Korean officials, aims to deepen economic ties across key industries.
South Korea and the U.S. have come to a complete trade deal that will see South Korea charged 15% tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump held talks with Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Economy and Finance Gu Yun-chol, Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwan, and Trade Minister Yeo Han-gu in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday local time. They finalized a trade deal just 2 days before the 25% U.S. reciprocal tariffs on South Korea were to come into effect on August 1st. Along with the 15% tariffs, South Korea will invest $350 billion for investments owned and controlled by the United States, which will be selected by Trump himself. Of that investment, $150 billion will be used for cooperation in the shipbuilding industry, and $200 billion will be invested in other sectors such as semiconductors, nuclear energy, and biotechnology. The U.S. Department of Commerce also stated that the United States will hold 90% of the profits from South Korea's investment fund in the U.S. South Korea will also purchase $100 billion of LNG or other energy products and will further open its market to American products, including cars and agriculture. But South Korea's domestic rice and beef markets will not be further opened. And tariffs on automobiles have also been reduced to 15%. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick also stated that tariffs on South Korean semiconductors have been set at levels that are not less favorable than those applied to other countries. President Lee Jae-myung is set to visit the White House in 2 weeks for a bilateral meeting. Even though a full trade deal was reached, Finance Minister Koo Yoon-cheol's meeting with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will take place as scheduled on Thursday.
Let's go in for a short commercial break. More world news coming right after this. Welcome back. Myanmar's military junta has formed an 11-member commission led by Commander-in-Chief Min Aung Hlaing to oversee elections scheduled for December. The move signals a tentative step toward political transition amid ongoing conflict and instability in the country.
The Myanmar military, which seized power in a February 2021 coup, announced the establishment of an election committee headed by Min Aung, who remains the country's interim president and military chief. According to state media, the commission will organize national elections, the first since the coup sparked widespread protests and escalated into a brutal civil conflict. Despite this announcement, the junta has not officially set an election date, though Min Aung confirmed plans for December. The ongoing unrest and fractured political landscape raises questions about the election's credibility and inclusivity. Since the coup, Myanmar has been engulfed in violent clashes between the military and various ethnic armed groups, as well as pro-democracy resistance forces. Thousands have been killed and millions displaced, leading to a humanitarian crisis. The military's control over the electoral process has drawn criticism from opposition groups and international observers who view the upcoming vote as a potential attempt to legitimize military rule rather than restore democracy. Min Aung's dual role as military commander and interim president consolidates his grip on power, limiting prospects for genuine political reform. The international community has responded with sanctions and diplomatic pressure demanding a return to civilian rule and the release of political prisoners, including outside leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Yet the junta remains defiant, emphasizing sovereignty and stability as justifications for its actions. Analysts caution that while elections could theoretically open a path toward political normalization, the deeply divided society and ongoing violence present significant barriers. Monitoring whether the elections will be free, fair, and inclusive remains a key concern for Myanmar's future and regional stability.
Russia launched a devastating missile and drone attack on Kyiv, killing at least 6, including a child, and injuring dozens. The overnight assault struck 27 locations across the capital, causing widespread damage and forcing residents to seek shelter underground.
The overnight barrage consisted of over 300 drones and 8 missiles, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The coordinated assault targeted residential areas, schools and hospitals across 4 districts of Kyiv, resulting in extensive damage at 27 sites. Ukrainian emergency crews worked through the night, rescuing survivors and recovering bodies from collapsed buildings, including a residential tower directly hit by a missile strike. Interior Minister Klimenko confirmed missile fragments were found at the scene and investigations are ongoing to determine the exact weaponry used. The civilian toll includes at least 6 deaths, among them a 6-year-old boy and his mother, with over 80 people wounded. Eyewitnesses described terrifying scenes as residents sought refuge in metro stations while explosions shook the city relentlessly. The attack underscores the increasing intensity of Russian strikes targeting urban centers far from the front line, part of a broader strategy to destabilize Ukrainian morale and infrastructure during the 4th year of the war. Despite the heavy onslaught, Ukrainian air defenses intercepted the majority of the incoming threat, shooting down 288 drones and several cruise missiles. President Zelensky condemned the attacks as war crimes, while international leaders expressed growing concern over escalating violence. The assault comes amid heightened diplomatic tensions, with US President Donald Trump shortening a deadline for peace talks with Russia. The situation remains volatile, with Kyiv bracing for further attacks amid ongoing conflict.
The UN Conference on Palestine's Future concluded its general debate, with over 120 countries participating amid rising calls for a two-state solution. However, Israel dismissed the talks as ineffective, while Palestinian representatives urged an end to occupation and violence. Explosions still continue in Gaza.
The high-level international conference, co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia, gathered representatives from more than 120 nations at the United Nations headquarters to discuss peaceful resolutions to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the implementation of the two-state solution. Originally postponed due to escalating tensions between Iran and Israel, the 3-day meeting circulated an outcome document for further consideration. Several countries, including Britain, Singapore, and Canada, announced intentions to formally recognize the state of Palestine, signaling a shift in global diplomacy amidst the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Israel's permanent representative to the UN, Derana, strongly criticized the conference, calling it a circus and dismissing its potential to achieve tangible outcomes. He emphasized that Israel's priority remains securing the release of hostages and dismantling Hamas, rejecting discussions on the two-state solution under current conditions. Dannon's comments reflect the deep divisions and skepticism surrounding international efforts, with Israel maintaining that negotiation should be grounded in security concerns rather than political declarations. In contrast, Riyad Manzoor, the Palestinian observer to the UN, expressed cautious optimism, stating the conference provided a political horizon for Palestinian sovereignty and an end to what he called Israel's illegal occupation. Highlighting the devastating toll on civilians in Gaza, Mansour underscored the urgent need for international pressure to halt violence and pursue peaceful solutions. The conflict has claimed over 60,000 Palestinian lives, with widespread international calls for humanitarian relief and recognition of Palestinian statehood growing louder ahead of the UN General Assembly meeting in September.
Thousands of fans gathered in Birmingham to honor Black Sabbath's Ozzy Osbourne during his funeral procession. The legendary heavy metal frontman, who passed away at 76, was remembered for his iconic music and lasting impact on rock history.
Thousands of fans lined the streets of Birmingham on Wednesday to send off Ozzy Osbourne, known as the Godfather of heavy metal and the Prince of Darkness. The Black Sabbath frontman died on July 22nd at the age of 76. Osbourne had said he did not want his funeral to be a mope fest, and a New Orleans-style brass band led the procession through his home city. But the celebration was mixed with sadness from his fans and family. His wife, Sharon Osbourne, had tears in her eyes as she took in a floral tribute that had amassed at a bench dedicated to Osbourne and his Black Sabbath bandmates. Along the route, fans chanted and spoke of the musician's legacy and impact on their lives.
Been a Black Sabbath fan for a long time, watched the Osbournes on the TV. So we've grown up with these being in our homes, so they're like our family, you know?
Yeah. Everyone's here for Ozzy.
For Jamie Martin and Tony Mack, members of a local band, emotions were high. They credit Osbourne as inspiration for their music.
It's been very emotional, being in a band together. It just means the world to us to see the community pull together. I'm very sad to see Ozzy go, but I think he'd be proud of the turnout today.
Osbourne died 17 days after his farewell gig in Birmingham, where a star-studded lineup featuring bands like Metallica and Guns N' Roses paid tribute to Black Sabbath's legacy. The band's hits, Paranoid, War Pigs, and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, made Osbourne a star in the early 1970s, and his antics on stage, most famously biting the head off a bat, extended his fame far beyond metal music. A private funeral was held after the procession. No cause of death was given, but the star had disclosed a Parkinson's disease diagnosis in 2020.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more world news. Welcome back. A seal found injured from a shark bite last month has made a remarkable recovery and was released back into the wild this week. Wildlife rescuers says its survival and rehabilitation mark a rare success in marine animal rescue efforts.
She's fighting fit once again. She was released back into the water on Tuesday after that mammoth rehab mission. So she was first found with a shark attack wound in her abdomen. That was in canals off Newport. So that's a suburb just next to Scarborough in north of Brisbane. So she had that rehab and she's doing so much better. The people at SeaWorld releasing her Tuesday, like I mentioned, off Coffs Harbour. And they also put a tracker on her just to see how she goes.
We've put a GPS tracker on this little animal. It is part of a research program, and what we're hoping to see is that this animal turns around and continues down south.
A Melbourne man is recovering after life-saving surgery, becoming the first to benefit from Australia's new free cancer screening program. Health officials say the initiative is already proving effective in detecting cancers early and improving patient outcomes.
It's been a whirlwind 2 weeks for Patrick and his wife Leanne. Just 12 hours before this interview, the 65-year-old underwent surgery to remove a cancer they didn't know he had.
I was very surprised, again, because there's no symptoms.
Patrick came to me for initially a sleep issue, something really benign sounding.
But a CT scan offered through the lung cancer screening program found a tumour. Surgeons managed to remove it entirely, but getting to this stage is frustratingly rare.
And you just see case after case of patients that have had no symptoms at all, and their first presentation is spread to the brain or spread to the bowel or to the liver, and they've just presented with virtually incurable cancers.
Only 16% of lung cancer cases are detected at stage 1, while more than half are picked up when it's too late. But there's hope the screening program will flip the script, preventing more than 500 deaths every year.
It'll fundamentally change the way lung cancer is treated in this country, and it will fundamentally change the outcome for patients.
Although post-surgery celebrations are not.
I didn't want to mention that, but we will probably have a few beers.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes of seeing you again, I'm Pritika Sivakumar, and we'll leave you tonight with the visuals of a Spanish collector setting a record for dog figurines. Also, don't forget to send us your feedback through email at feedback.ad24english@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076-805-7933. Anuradhi Vikramasinghe will be joining you next with the Nightly Business Report. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.